Good day everyone, in this video I'm trying to explain you how we practice slope landings on a hang glider. First of all, what are the two main problems you're facing if you want to land your glider up the slope? To me, first problem is getting your approach right, and then second problem is changing your hands from the base bar to the upright tubes of the A-frame. You can do this in two ways. You can approach the slope flying your glider on the base bar, or you can approach the slope flying your glider on the upright tubes. For your first slope landing, I highly recommend you to fly your glider on the upright tubes, because to me it's simply just a lot easier to do it like that. The only disadvantage is that you may have a little bit less glider control, but since you have to have very calm conditions for your first slope landings, this is not really disturbing you because you're not dealing with a lot of turbulence. The first thing you need to practice is go on a normal flight, change your hands to the uprights high up in the air, find the position. You need to play with the angle of your body and with the height of your hands, where you still can pull a lot of speed holding the uprights. If you're too high with your hands, you can't really pull anymore and you don't really have a good glider control. Then you can fly the whole landing approach like this. I would do this a couple times, try to come in on final with as much speed as possible. You need to be really confident in doing that to be ready for your first slope landing. Then, if you want to start your first slope landing, of course you can do a couple practice approaches, flying onto the slope, turning away early enough to see if you would be at the right height. Then, if this works well, next thing is to go for it. For the first time, I would recommend to do a long final approach in a bit more than trim speed. Then you can observe if it really fits. You can still turn away. Then if you see it really works, roughly 100 meters away from the slope, you start pulling as much speed as possible. You fly up the slope and you push. This slope here is not the best example for the first slope landing. It's quite short, it's quite steep. It's definitely recommendable to have a longer, not too steep slope. It's easier to hit it, and it's also not too big of a difference to a landing in the flats if the slope is not too steep. Also, finding the right timing when to start letting the bar out and flying up the slope is more forgiving and more easy on a more flat slope. Once you are a little bit more in a routine, everything gets a little bit more playful. You don't need such a long approach anymore. Like here, I'm just flying out, grabbing the uprights, turning around and land back onto the slope. Like this, of course, you can do the right terrain, you can do a couple landings in one flight. As I mentioned in the beginning, it's also possible to do a slope landing flying the glider on the base bar during the approach. To land like this, I always position my slider, the slider of the harness for the approach, in the furthest forward position, because then I'm already quite upright with my body and it's easy to grab the uprights, because you will see it is quite stressful. But it works as well. But of course there's a chance of missing the upright, of losing control in the worst moment, so it is more advanced, this technique, but I think it can help when you have rough conditions. You need to land into a slope because you're just more in control of the glider during the approach, because you're holding the base bar. Here I'm landing out of the turn, also be careful with that, it makes it definitely more demanding than if you have a long straight final approach. In the end, it's all about practice and finding your way. I think it's important to frequently do slope landings in easy conditions to really be in the routine, because at the moment when you're really gonna use it for real, you might be tired from a long flight, it might be difficult conditions, you won't know the terrain. So the more routine you have, the more slope landings you do, the better off you are. If you want to practice slope landings, be careful of course. As I said, most important is calm conditions for your first slope landings, a good terrain, not too steep, and an even ground. Best is if you put some wheels or something that slides on your base bar, because on the first ones you can easily miss the right timing and end up on your belly, and in an even terrain with something sliding, rolling on your base bar, you won't hurt yourself and you won't damage anything like this. Once you have done a couple landings, most likely you will realize that it's almost easier to land up a slope than land in the flats. And then it gets quite playful and you can have a lot of fun.